You and 50, how did y'all meet?
Well, I met 50 through Black Hands. I was head of security for Black Hands. Chaz Williams was on American Gangster. BET American Gangster. He used to manage Foxy Brown for a while.
Gene Deal just dropped a bombshell, and it's sending seismic waves through the hip-hop universe. According to the former bodyguard and longtime industry insider, what went down between 50 Cent and M3RDER Inc. wasn't just some typical rap beef. It was a calculated, six-figure assassination plot with street power and major label dollars backing it. In Deal's version of events, Irv Gotti and Ja Rule didn't just hate 50 Cent. They wanted him wiped off the map, a $250,000 bounty. That's not beef, that's war. And the names tangled up in this story, Supreme, Gotti, Ja, all wrapped around one target, Curtis 50 Cent Jackson.
50 was the type of dude, he was young, and he would just write everything. You know, you be talking to him, and he'd be writing shit down. That's why I think that song he got called Hands Up or Up in Here or something like that. He said, I got the savoir faire. I told him what savoir faire means. That was my company. You know what I'm saying? Or get up. I think that's the song or whatever like that. You know, so.
Deal says this wasn't just a warning shot or some impulsive hit gone wrong. He claims this was a well-funded plan with real money changing hands and real consequences at stake. The implication? Irv and Ja weren't passive figures in this chaos. They were financiers, backers, allegedly signing checks that could have ended a man's life and shifted the entire hip-hop power structure before Get Rich or Die Try ever had a chance to drop. And who sits in the shadows behind all of this? Supreme Kenneth McGriff, the man whose name still carries enough weight in South Jamaica, Queens, to open doors, close mouths, and, according to prosecutors and street whispers alike, make people vanish.
Long story short, Irv Gotti and Supreme and all them pulled up, and Supreme jumped out the car, and him and 50 was just mean mugging each other. And Supreme was telling me like, yo, Gene, tell the old man that I'm not coming to the party and everything like that.
Now here's where it gets even murkier. Supreme wasn't just some neighborhood enforcer. His alleged ties to MI were so tight, federal investigators spent years trying to untangle the money trail. And Deal suggests Supreme wasn't simply inspired to act on his own. No, according to him, Irv and Ja didn't just know about the bounty, they helped fund it. They empowered it. They made sure Supreme had everything he needed to carry it out. That wasn't random violence, it was business. Brutal, calculated business designed to remove 50 from the industry permanently. And here's the kicker. According to Gene, it wasn't just about stopping a rapper from blowing up. It was about erasing someone who knew too much. If 50 Cent had been allowed to keep climbing, Deal implies, he would have exposed something far bigger, the overlapping ecosystem of street muscle and label boardrooms, a place where hits weren't just tracks, they were real-life contracts. And to stop that kind of truth from surfacing, some players were allegedly willing to silence the source permanently, which raises a sickening possibility. Was 50's survival not just miraculous, but a catastrophic failure for the people who wanted him gone?
Like, while he was mean mugging, I didn't know it was a problem between them two at the time. So he got back in the limousine, they drove off. And so then I told Chaz the situation. I was like, yo, what you calling them ain't coming to the party? Because he asked me, did I see them? I said, yeah, they came up in a limousine. They said they wasn't coming to the party.
We know what happened next, or at least we think we do. In May 2000, 50 Cent was shot 9 times outside his grandmother's house. The streets went quiet, no one officially took credit, no one was charged. But the timing, the target, the aftermath, it all synced too cleanly with what Deal now suggests was a coordinated plan. And if that wasn't disturbing enough, the whispers didn't end there. Some insiders claim that after the hit failed and 50 refused to fold, Ja Rule allegedly pushed Supreme to finish the job. The humiliation of failure, especially when your rival turns a near-fatal attack into a brand, was reportedly too much to swallow.
We just became cool. We just used to talk. And then after the big fight that he had with Ja Rule in Atlanta, Ja Rule and the people like that in Atlanta, they set up a meeting at Black Hands. So they set the meeting up at Black Hands, you know, for...
Let's talk about that for a second, because it's not just about bullets and betrayal, it's about ego. In this version of the story, Ja Rule wasn't just angry that 50 survived, he was furious that 50 thrived. He turned scars into mythology, survival into marketing, and that put Ja in a corner he couldn't wrap his way out of. Word on the street, according to Deal and echoed by former insiders, is that Ja allegedly called for an escalation. No more half measures, no more silence. He wanted the mission finished, clean, quiet, final. And if that sounds like conspiracy theory fantasy, remember this. These aren't the first whispers of a hit linked to music money. In court documents, in federal probes, in industry hush-hush circles, Supreme's name pops up again and again as a man who could cross both worlds, the violent and the vinyl. And the MI crew? They were right in the middle. Gotti was later indicted on charges of money laundering, though acquitted. But the feds weren't probing MI because of bad album reviews. They were chasing links between substances, violence, and bankrolled street warfare. And 50 Cent? He'd already been stabbed once, allegedly by a MI artist at the Hit Factory. He knew what was coming. His songs said as much. He even warned them, line for line, before the bullets flew.
Nobody knows this, bruh. Chaz had worked a deal out for Irv Gotti and them to give 50 $250,000. He had worked a deal for them to get $250,000. So now
we have Gene Deal connecting the dots the courts never could, or wouldn't. His version paints Irv and Ja not as rival artists, but as co-conspirators. People with motive, means, and allegedly, the money to make sure 50's voice was never heard again. It's a chilling accusation, one that's nearly impossible to prove in court after all these years. But in the realm of hip-hop, where quiet is wealth and reality perishes with the onlookers, Deal's explosive revelation has already wreaked havoc. And while Ja Rule spends his time blasting 50 online, mocking his career, clowning his image, and throwing shade about alleged federal cooperation, one thing keeps resurfacing. Ja told 50 to handle your business with the ones who shot him. He didn't deny the hit, he just threw it back in 50's face, like the past still burns. Then he threatened to drop receipts. Go ahead and lie, Ja tweeted. Tell these good people the paperwork fake so I can send this next shot, we got receipts. That statement hit different in light of Gene Deal's claims. Because if Ja truly has documents, if there's more under wraps, it's not just internet posturing anymore. It's fuel on a fire that Deal just reignited. And remember, these people are veterans of the silence game. They know how to scrub evidence, lean on loyalty, or drown the noise in hits and headlines. For this story to survive 2 decades, that alone is a clue that someone wanted it forgotten.
Whatever the situation is, Chaz told 50 when they was in Atlanta, he said, go talk to Ja, man, y'all talk that shit out. But he never asked 50 how 50 felt about it. This is the conversation that me and 50 is having. Because we had this conversation in Dr. Dre's studio when I was bodyguarding Scott Storch.
Justice. It was strategy. No charges, no closure. Just the lingering idea that something bigger was behind it, that someone higher up signed off, that the music business wasn't just funding tours, it was funding targets. And if Ja Rule really did press Supreme to keep going after the first attempt failed, then we're no longer talking about a beef that spiraled out of control, we're talking about an obsession, a vendetta, the kind that rewrites the rules of hip-hop feuds, where one artist's survival isn't just inconvenient, it's a threat to the legacy of everyone who tried to take him out. What's more disturbing than the alleged plot itself is what followed, not the chaos, not the bloodshed, but the silence. The way the industry, the executives, the labels, the gatekeepers closed ranks when 50 Cent didn't just survive, but spoke out. They didn't rally around a rising artist who had nearly lost his life. They shut him out, dropped him, blacklisted him, let the streets clean up their own mess, while they kept raking in profits from the same people allegedly connected to the trigger. That's the part most fans never saw. While 50 was licking his wounds, both physical and professional, the very system that should have protected him was allegedly protecting the people who wanted him gone.
It's going sour from the $250,000 they were supposed to give 50. You understand? They were supposed to get $250,000 because they was thinking that 50 was supposed to, they had put out paperwork and lies that 50 snitched and 50 didn't snitch. 50 ain't say nothing about that stabbing. That came from the DJ and the engineer.
And this wasn't just a passive act of negligence. This was business, cold, deliberate business. According to multiple insiders, certain media platforms and label heads turned a blind eye to the street-level chaos tied to MI, because that chaos came wrapped in platinum records and major returns. Nobody wanted to dig too deep into the ties between Kenneth Supreme McGriff and Irv Gotti, because untangling that would mean exposing how deeply the music world had allowed itself to be co-opted. It wasn't just about covering up a beef, it was about guarding an empire. One that linked the top floor of a label building to corners in Queens, where Supreme's words still echoed louder than any track on Hot 97.
You understand? They decided they wasn't going to get a $250,000 because 50 didn't come to the meeting. All right. This meeting was at Black Hands in Queens, right?
Gene Deal's claims don't just accuse Irv Gotti of being complicit. They suggest Gotti was orchestrating this entire chessboard from behind the scenes. He wasn't just a hitmaker. He was allegedly a handler, a strategist, someone who knew how to sit in executive meetings during the day and coordinate with enforcers at night. Deal paints him as the man threading the needle between Supreme's street network and Murder Inc.'s chart dominance. And what's even more unsettling? There are whispers, whispered low but persistent, that Gotti may have quietly tried to cooperate with the very forces chasing him. Federal agents, court officials. A few longtime industry veterans claim Gotti held secret sit-downs with people he once swore to never speak to. If that's true, if Irv Gotti turned informant to save himself, then that would blow open one of hip-hop's most enduring myths, the idea that the game was being played clean on the streets and dirty only in courtrooms. Because if the man at the top of MI was trading information to protect his empire, then who did he leave behind? What secrets did he barter away? And how many people ended up in cuffs, or worse, because one executive decided his freedom was worth more than their silence?
Me and Chaz meet up. Chaz tells me, yo, we ain't dealing with 50 no more. And I said, we? He said, yeah, he's not doing what Black Hands need to do for him. I said, all right. I said, but we? What do you mean we?
It's not an unfounded theory. We've seen versions of this before. We know Gotti was indicted in the mid-2000s on charges of laundering money for Supreme, an accusation he denied, and which he eventually beat. But the indictment alone spooked Universal and Def Jam enough to distance themselves. Behind the scenes, executives scrambled. Files were shredded, phones were swapped, relationships were redefined, and yet the industry never apologized to 50. They never addressed the fact that he'd been stabbed, shot, and blackballed, all while his enemies kept getting platformed. And even now, years later, the bad blood is still boiling. Ja Rule continues to lash out, slinging every insult in the book at 50, calling him trash, accusing him of snitching, threatening to release documents. Tell these good people the paperwork fake so I can send this next shot, he wrote on social media, daring 50 to deny it. But what exactly is Ja holding on to? What is in those so-called receipts? Because if those documents exist and they say what he claims, then this feud isn't just petty online trolling, it's a ticking time bomb.
You know what I'm saying? Because at that meeting that 50 didn't show up with, Irv Gotti and them was worried about if something happened to 50, what Chaz was going to do. You understand? They was worried about whatever happened to 50. Yo, something happened to us. Yo, Slim, you ain't gonna you ain't gonna change your mind. Slim said, change my mind. He ain't even calling me. He ain't dealing with me.
But let's not forget, these men have been circling each other for decades. 50 Cent hasn't just clapped back with words. He's dragged Ja and Irv through every channel he could find, buying out Ja's concert seats just to keep them empty, mocking Irv's health struggles, posting that now infamous image of himself beside a fake gravestone with the caption, "I'm smoking on Dag Gotti pack." This isn't rap beef. This is personal, relentless, and very, very public. But what if that public warfare is only the tip of the iceberg? What if the real story is still locked behind NDAs, sealed court filings, and hush-hush boardroom deals? Gene Deal seems to think the music industry wasn't just complicit, it was actively invested in keeping 50 silent. His blackballing wasn't an accident, it was a campaign. Because if he ever told the full truth, named every name, showed every receipt, the industry as we know it might not survive.
This ain't just something that I'm making up. They know it wasn't Supreme. It was Irv Gotti and his people who put that on 50. That's why 50 hate them so much.
What happened to 50 Cent in the early 2000s didn't just leave physical scars. It rewired his DNA. You don't survive 9 bullets, get blackballed by your own industry, and then rise to global fame without changing. That kind of betrayal reshapes how a person moves in every room. From that moment on, 50 stopped trusting anyone. He stopped playing nice. What emerged wasn't just a rapper, it was a machine. Cold, calculated, untouchable. The smile was still there, the bravado louder than ever, but underneath was a man who'd been hunted and refused to ever be prey again. That transformation bled into everything he did, every business deal, every public feud, every Instagram post that weaponized humor like a scalpel. It all traced back to that trauma. The man who once got shut out by record labels turned himself into one. The same guy they tried to silence now bankrolls television empires and signs distribution checks of his own. Power. Both the show and the concept became his identity. His obsession with control wasn't just ego. It was protection, a fortress built from bitterness and survival instinct, brick by brick, distract by distract. Even his most notorious beefs, the relentless shots at Ja Rule, the barbed posts about Irv Gotti, the petty taunts aimed at his rivals, they were more than entertainment, they were performance therapy, a method to control the very individuals and platforms that once abandoned him in a hopeless state. That's what most people miss. The trolling isn't random, it's engineered, it's strategic. Every insult, every meme, every calculated jab is a way of saying, I'm still here, and you can't touch me now.
I hate when personal things become public, because everyone speculates on things that they don't really know. I just know that.
But that mentality came at a cost. For all his success, 50 has become one of the most polarizing figures in entertainment. Adored by fans, feared by peers, and estranged from those closest to him. The walls he built to keep danger out may have also kept healing out. The same fire that propelled him to mogul status is the one that scorched every bridge he didn't build himself. And maybe that's the real legacy of what happened on that sidewalk in Queens. Not just the scars or the sales, but the permanent shift in how he trusts, how he fights, and how he loves. It's a twisted alchemy. Trauma turned into power, betrayal repurposed as empire. The question is whether that power ever truly satisfies the ghost of the man who almost didn't make it. Because behind every viral jabbed and billion-dollar deal, we still see flickers of that young artist standing in the middle of an industry that left him bleeding and chose not to look back.
You know what I mean? Like, not when relationship like that. Like, they've been with each other. Look, I was an opening act for the Cash Money.
And here's where things get truly unsettling after all the headlines, the lawsuits, the diss tracks, the Twitter rants. Nobody has ever been held accountable. Not for the $250,000 bounty, not for the 9 bullets that almost ended 50 Cent's life, not for the cover-ups, not for the silence. The system swallowed it whole. And then it moved on. Gene Deal says that silence wasn't just fear, it was a strategy. A wall of silence built brick by people who had something to lose, money, reputations, careers. The ones who knew too much stayed quiet. The ones who knew nothing were paid to stay that way, and the few who tried to ask questions were quietly pushed out. One former producer who worked with MI told us off the record that everyone knew Supreme wasn't just a name in the liner notes. Another executive swears he saw the checks, big ones, no artist fees, just blank payables under shell companies that led nowhere.
Now, I ain't never had a conversation with these. I don't know these. I know your name, I seen your video. Other than that, we ain't got no business together. We ain't got no reason to even be talking to each other.
So we're left with this, a man nearly silenced, a label allegedly tied to a street empire, and an industry that kept dancing while the bullets were still warm. And now, with Gene Deal cracking the door open again, the question isn't whether this story's real. The question is how much more hasn't been told. And here's the most chilling part. Gene Deal's revelations might only be the beginning, because the moment one person breaks the silence, others start to remember. And what if they come forward next? What if more names drop, more documents leak, and that old wall of silence finally crumbles? Would it force the industry to face its role in all of this, or would it just spark another cover-up? We've seen careers built on secrets. We've seen artists rise and fall without ever knowing who really pulled the strings. But if Gene's story holds weight, then this isn't just a scandal, it's a reckoning. One that could unravel the image of an entire era. So we've got to ask, if 50 Cent was the target, who else was on the list? And if the silence was by design, who is paying for it? Drop your thoughts in the comments and keep your eyes open, because when the truth finally breaks through, it doesn't ask permission. We'll be watching. Stay loud, stay sharp, and stay skeptical, because this story, it's not finished, not even close.